Hello, this is Brian Scuttle of Sonic Cinema. With the release of Stranger Things Season 4.2 and the end of Season 4, I thought I would take a look back on not only episodes 8 and 9 of Season 4, but also just Season 4 in general and give my general feelings on the series, on this past season. So, with regards to episodes 8 and 9, I kind of feel like there was a lot of filler in some of those episodes. Certainly did not need to have two episodes that totaled over 3.5 hours of film. I think that was a bit excessive, especially seeing as though episode 8 deals with a lot of exposition and basically build up to episode 9. I don't necessarily think it was quite as effective as it could have been in that respect. That being said, I did like the story of episode 9. I thought the way episode 9 played out was interesting. And it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see where the series goes with season 5. I mean, we basically have everybody back in Hawkins now, and so there's all of the things that are in play. With regards to season 4 in general, I think this is probably my second favorite season after the first season. I think part of the reason for that is that it feels like this season, more than seasons 2 and 3, really dealt with larger societal issues that were prevalent in the 80s. In season 1, so much of it is based on Will's disappearance and how that impacts Joyce, and it really goes into the whole idea of stranger danger, of children on milk cartons, and all of that was very prevalent in the 1980s. And I love that about season 1. That's one of the reasons it was such an impactful season. I mean, obviously the introduction of Elle is a big part of it, but at the same time, because of the fact that the series was dealing with this whole notion of being leery about sending your kids outside and all of that, even though that certainly was not always what a lot of people really, the experience a lot of people had at the time. It was interesting to it was actually kind of interesting to see that play out in Stranger Things with a supernatural angle. The thing that I love about season 4 is that it does that with the idea of satanic panic, and especially the idea of Dungeons and Dragons equals demonic and satanic rituals. And I think a lot of that ties in so well with the introduction of Vecna as the villain, and Vecna is probably the strongest villain this series has had. Is one of the stronger villains I've seen in TV, and I think it's really interesting because of the fact that the way that they wrote the character of Eddie was such an important part of that, because of the fact that you start out and you can kind of tell the tropes that they're playing off of with Eddie, but at the same time, you are, as you get to know him and as you start to realize what is going on with Vecna, you start to get these layers of Eddie that you start to see with Eddie what the kids see. And so it's really a great piece of character development him having the big moments in episode 9 as far as the self-sacrifice master of puppets was fantastic. It is comparable to Running Up That Hill from the Dear Billy episode. I think at the climax, I don't know that they needed to use Running Up That Hill again. I think it was effective, but I don't necessarily think nothing was going to top the way they used it at the end of episode 4 with Max. And I think that's kind of an important thing. So overall, though, I was really, even though I do feel like it was probably way too long. I thought some of the episodes were way too long. I think, and I do feel like the Russian aspect of this series was played out. I kind of glad we're not gonna have to worry about that anymore, because and Hopper surviving, you could argue that maybe they shouldn't have gone that route, but I do, and yeah, this is kind of a case where they have been kind of cagey about killing their main characters. But at the same time, that's not necessarily what this show is. I mean, I think you have some impactful deaths in a series in the seasons, but at the same time, I think fewer and far between, because this is essentially as much of a newer riff on like the Amblin formula from the 80s and referencing that 80s type of family film adventure as much as anything, even though it's done through very contemporary language. So I think that was pretty so the fact that they haven't killed off more of the characters, it kind of makes sense. And I mean, it did to a certain extent kind of feel like maybe spoiler alert, Max should have died as a sacrifice, but I think the way that they made it to where she doesn't die was very, very appropriate for the character of Val. And so I think it was a good choice. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out in season 5. And those are my thoughts with season 4 of Stranger Things. This is Brian Scuttle. Thank you very much. And I will see you for season 5.